Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
President Trump's call for a wall on the southern border with Mexico has been at the center of his plan, of course, to crack down on illegal immigration. Well, meanwhile, the New York Times reports, quote, as the Trump administration moves on multiple fronts to shut down illegal border crossings, it has also stepped up punitive measures targeting private American citizens who provide compassionate help to migrants, Good Samaritan aid that is often intended to just save somebody's life. In January, 4 humanitarian aid volunteers with an Arizona nonprofit were convicted of misdemeanor charges for leaving water and food for migrants coming by. An additional volunteer with the group faces federal felony harboring and concealment charges. Well, the New York Times highlights the case of Texas County Attorney Teresa Todd, who stopped to help 3 young Central American migrants. The report notes Ms. Todd told the 3 young people to get out of the cold and into her car. She was phoning and texting friends for help when a sheriff's deputy drove up, followed soon by the Border Patrol. She says they asked me to step behind my car, and the supervisor came and started Mirandizing me. And then he says that I could be found guilty of transporting illegal aliens. Wow. Well, joining right now is Teresa Todd, County Attorney of Jeff Davis County, Texas. Thank you. Teresa, thank you for coming on. And I think the best thing you could do is, without many questions from you, just tell us your Good Samaritan experience and how it went the way it did.
Yes. I was driving home from work one night. I had had a late meeting at the city of Marfa, and I had a working dinner after that. It was almost 10 o'clock, and I was driving the 20 miles between Marfa and Presidio County and Fort Davis, where I live in Jeff Davis County. And a young man just ran out into the road and flagged me down. He was about the same size he looked about the same age as my younger son. So my heart just went out to him, and I thought, oh, my Lord, I've got to stop and help this young man. What if this were my son? I would want somebody to stop and help him. So I turned around, drove all the way back around, and stopped to talk to him. And he was with his brother and his sister. They had all been traveling for days. They didn't have food or water. And his sister was very, very ill. I could tell that she needed immediate medical attention. It was chilly that night, so I asked them to get in my car so they would be in out of the elements. I turned on the heater, and I tried to call a friend who works for a refugee services organization, and then I called my friend who's sector counsel for the U.S. Border Patrol. And while I'm making these calls, I see someone pull up very slowly behind me. I don't know who it is, and it was very scary because I didn't know if it was somebody who might want to cause harm to the kids or to me. So it ended up, it was a Presidio County Sheriff's deputy. He came and I explained the situation. I explained that the sister, who now I know her name is Esmeralda, that she really needed medical assistance immediately. The Border Patrol came. And I assumed that I would, of course, be asked to come down to the station and give a statement. I mean, I'm a prosecutor in Texas. We take statements from witnesses. But when they asked me to step behind my car and started Mirandizing me for harboring or transporting illegal aliens, it was very surreal and it was crazy. And I immediately said, I didn't do that. I didn't do anything. I'm just trying to help these kids. But they took the kids.
Well, here's the question. We got to figure out the lesson, because everything has to give us a lesson. What were you supposed to do as a human being, an American or whatever? You're walking, you're driving along in the dark. You see people in desperate trouble. Are they arguing you should have just left them alone out there to die, maybe, in the one case of the one person who's really in trouble physically? Is that what they said to you? You should just let them alone, just leave them out there alone?
No, what they did say after they released me was that it wasn't safe for me traveling alone to have stopped to help anyone on the side of the road.
What do you think should be done? Is there an experience there that's useful because there's always this battle between humanity and our sovereignty. How do we protect our sovereignty and also respect the humanity of people who are in desperate need for a better life? How do we put the two together? That's, to me, the conundrum.
It's a great question, Chris, and I've thought a lot about it. And in Texas law, we have several defenses to prosecution for situations where one person is trying to help another. We have a defense of necessity, we have a defense of third persons, and we have another defense that has to do with people's physical welfare. So I believe that I'm not aware of there being any of these types of defenses under a federal immigration law, but I think there needs to be. I think that's how we preserve our humanity.
Okay. Well said. It's so great to have you on. We're so glad we read about your story in the New York Times. Teresa Todd, good luck with the legal proceedings. I got to believe you're going to make it, but you're a good person. I tell you that. I know that. If I was out in the desert, I'd want you to stop. So let's have to look at it that way.
It is Tuesday, the 14th of May of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Just a scant dash of smoked hot Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. But don't tell Orban. He'll try to, strong-arm you into some dictatorial stance that you don't even adhere to. But you will have to, especially if you're in Hungary. And Donald Trump just loves that guy. Oh, you're doing everything I want to do. I have all of these impediments. He would never use the word impediment. But you know what I mean. Donald Trump. How many countries can he beat the war drums on? Jeez, it's almost like the spaghetti thing. Let's throw up all these countries we could go to war with and see which sticks. Not knowing that they may all stick, and we could be in bigger trouble than we already are. Yeah, that's right. Hey, don't abandon American farmers. At least that's the plaintive cry from American farmers. I'm a little astounded. I read a report out of North Dakota where North Dakota farmers are being hurt tremendously by Trump's trade war. But they still love him. And they're going to vote for him again. Which I think probably what they should do is grow wheat on the Siberian steppes. Just go there and do it. Which it might work because Siberia is experiencing temperatures in the upper 80s right now. Siberia. So grow wheat there. You'll love it. And they'll love you for it. Hey, what else? Oh, my God. William Barr is threatening to go on a nationwide tour. He says he's been a little, like behind the scenes lately, but he's going to be out there and he's going to be visiting with people real soon. And I'm thinking John Mitchell, that pompous ass. Yeah, I don't know. John Mitchell did spend some time in a country club prison, but just throw him there. I don't care what it is, as long as there's the term prison attached to the description of the facility that Bill Barr will be residing in. And maybe some others as well. There's a lot of them do. They deserve to be there. And then after that, after they've served their time here, then they can go on trial at The Hague for crimes against humanity. And I would be happy to help. Yes, I would. What's on the rest of the menu here today in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, the Trump administration is going after Good Samaritans who give compassionate aid to migrants, even when that Good Samaritan is a county attorney in Texas. Yeah, giving water to a migrant who could be deemed illegal on the spur of the moment is, a crime, apparently, and Trump and his minions are trying to make it a federal crime. And if they can't make it a federal crime, they'll get local cops to help ICE round up all these do-gooders who are doing too good for, I don't know, the hate that we need to manufacture against brown and black and everybody else. All those people, everybody else. Yeah, we already know about activists, actual activists who have gone and put water out in the desert, survival tents and whatnot, so that people can survive out there. And those people have been arrested and they're going to trial for harboring fugitives or any number of ridiculous Nazi Gestapo charges. Let's be clear. This is what the Gestapo did. And it looks like what the Gestapo is doing right now. Because for all intents and purposes, ICE and DHS are the Gestapo. And this county attorney just wanted to help get him out of the cold. And apparently that's a crime. Now, it is also a crime in Texas not to give compassionate aid. Okay? So let's be clear. And her solution, the county attorney's solution to that is, well, maybe we need to make it a federal statute. To deny compassionate aid to someone in need should be the crime. Topsy-turvy world we live here, huh? Making America great again? Well, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, Kevin McCarthy. Yeah, the minority leader. Kevin McCarthy, that guy, invents a story about trying to get Obama to stop ignoring the Russians interfering in the 2016 election. It was Obama who ignored the Russians. And, oh yeah, gaslight much, Kevin? You're going to join Mitch and gaslight us? Hey, Lordy, we have the tapes. Stephen Miller and other anti-immigrant hardliners in the administration have plans to sweep through 10 cities and arrest 10,000 migrants in one mass raid. Wow, crystal knock. And a judge ruled that ex-Coast Guard lieutenant and suspected domestic terrorist Chris Hasson will remain in custody while awaiting trial. Well, something good is happening in the world now, isn't it? After the break, we move to the chef's table where Mike Pompeo gave an aluminum tubes and yellow cake from Africa presentation to NATO about the Iranian threat. Gulf of Tonkin munch, Mike? And North Korea says a cargo ship seized by the U.S. violates the spirit of the Trump-Kim summit that there's no transcript of. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link. Thank you, Kelly, for monitoring that for us. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the link to contribute to this effort of resistance on our part, Netroots Radio, of course. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, those efforts will help our efforts in that massive resistance that we have been doing for the last 8 years, 24/7, 365. And we thank you for your generosity. These machines have been doing stellar work. They are workhorses, and they continue to be workhorses, but workhorses wear down. And we got to get some new equipment, and thank you for your generosity in helping us collect the funds that we can save up to do that. And pay our bills, too, so that we can just sneak under the radar. If you don't pay your bills, they usually notice you, especially when you're resisting. So we pay our bills. Yeah, it's sort of a plot to be sliding under the radar, as I say. Just sliding. All right. Thank you for your generosity indeed. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so. It's very simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and he does stellar work doing that as well. Follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam. I post show notes and links diary, which I like to call the show notes and links diary, on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media. So, very important part of this show, so do check those links out, because you'll get the more full story, as well as the massive embellishments that I add for, well, let's call it entertainment value. Hopefully that uplifts and enlightens. Let's hope. Okay, and you can follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest. Pick up podcasts by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found, because they are all out there, every single one, indeed. Okay, let's get into this first story. I was going to tell some little tidbits of personal information. Maybe I will. My poor mom, she claims to not exercise. She's really been, I guess, against sports, but I think what it is, well, actually, it is a combination of that. She just didn't like the structure of physical education. Yeah, she was a rebel, really a rebel. And she wasn't really into competitive sports. And I can see the reason, it's a little unseemly at times. But of course, in our rebellion, we're going to exercise and go out for sports. I even went out for the Boy Scouts, and they really, really didn't want me to be a Boy Scout. Because of really the military regimentation that was at odds with my parents' beliefs. So I have come to understand it, but to say that she doesn't exercise is wrong. She does chores. Her chores are her exercise. If we called exercise chores, Mom, sit down here at the stationary bicycle and do some chores. She would pedal that stationary bicycle gleefully and happily because it was a chore. So my mother was cleaning out a closet, was just a big closet that we keep building supplies and any number of other things. Paint cans, not paint cans, but paint in cans. And all sorts of other stuff. So she shouldn't have been in there. There's some heavy things that she shouldn't be trying to lift. And of course, that was going to be a task on my list. I just was clearing out an area in which to put that stuff into a better space and then clear things up. So for some reason, she wanted to help, unbeknownst to me, because I was out clearing out another space in which I was going to move this stuff. And she tripped over some bags that were in her way, took a header, lacerated her ear, bounced her head against the closet, these sliding doors, knocked them off their runners, bleeding quite badly because she's a bleeder. And her skin is so thin, it's paper thin. So I had to take her to ER, and they put a couple staples in her head because she's so hard-headed the tape wouldn't work. They had to put staples in her head and stitched up her ear with a couple of sutures. So my poor mom, darn you. I should have said, hey, don't be doing that kind of exercise. And she would not clear out that closet ever again. Call it a chore. She's going to go do it. All right, let's get into this first article here, or first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, which just happens to be an article by Oliver Willis out of Share Blue Media. All right, and it is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Yes, there is corn in the chowder. If you don't like that, well, I guess don't order it. Because there are some other items here in this virtual salon. Okay, Kevin McCarthy. God, I hate that guy. Remember when he and Paul Ryan were, expounding about Rohrabacher and Trump being the two bought-off politicians, the biggest bought-off politicians that was bought off the most by Russia. I'll get it out. And Paul Ryan said, now let's keep this between us because, that this proves how we are a family, as in a mob family. And it's all on tape. They didn't know they were being taped, but it was. Don't trust your catering staff. I mean, how many times are they going to figure that one out? Don't. They're never going to figure it out. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy lied by claiming that Republicans pushed Obama to act to protect American elections against Russian interference instead of we know the facts. Mitch McConnell saying, you bring that out, we're going to say you were interfering with this election for partisan gain. Of course, this was also during the time when there was a meme put out there that Obama was going to perpetuate a mythical war with Iran to hold on to the presidency and not give it up at the transition. They were perpetuating that lie also, and now they're perpetuating this one. The idea of a foreign entity trying to move into our elections is something Republicans have been working on for quite some time, McCarthy said on Sunday morning's Face the Nation. On CBS, by the way. We were the ones that pushed Obama, who ignored our concerns of what was going forward when he was president, McCarthy added. This is something Republicans have stood up for a long time, because everybody remembers when the Republicans were like the real Soviet fighters. And then for some reason, after the Soviet Union fell, the Republican Party adapted the Soviet 70-year model. You plan for 70 years, get rid of Social Security, and the next thing you know, you got a right-wing Nazi oligarch running the show. Back to Oliver Willis. Republicans, of course, did no such thing, and McCarthy is engaging in shocking revisionist history by claiming otherwise. We like to call that gaslighting. In fact, President Barack Obama was the one pushing to alert both state officials and the public to what his administration learned about Russian attempts to help Trump win in 2016. But Republican leaders actively resisted Obama's efforts to publicize and address the seriousness of the threat. Give a rat a cookie, they're going to want the whole dairy farm so they have every glass of milk too. A group of 8 congressional leaders, which included Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and then Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, were briefed on the Russian attack. But instead of working to protect national security, McConnell threatened to publicly accuse Obama of sabotaging Trump. And of course, we all saw this in real time. I will condemn you and the Obama administration for trying to mess up this election, McConnell told then CIA Director John Brennan. And McConnell's threats worked. He and his Republican allies made sure that the public did not become aware of the extent of the Russian interference to help Trump until much later, like after the election. At the time, McCarthy was House Majority Leader, and even before congressional leaders were briefed on their Russia attempt and threats, McCarthy privately admitted that he thought Trump was so compromised by Russia, he might well be on Putin's payroll. And that is the conference dinner that I alluded to just a bit earlier. McCarthy's false story is part of an ongoing conservative campaign to declare case closed and ignore evidence that Trump hoped to benefit from Russia's election interference, that he tried to obstruct the investigation into that interference. For the last 2 years, all we've heard is no collusion, witch hunt, firing FBI directors, firing Sally Yates, firing this person, that person, anybody who says, we got a hostile foreign power who writes in Cyrillic, really mucking everything up. It's not just the elections, it's the power grid. And a lot of other things too. And all those people are getting fired. Or I think the term is purged. There are still multiple ongoing investigations into Trump's actions and those of top officials on his presidential campaign, including his son. And I will add, he is obstructing every single one of those 20-plus investigations right now. The GOP propaganda effort is failing, and McCarthy's bald-faced lie makes it clear that Republicans want to avoid the truth at all costs. Republicans issued a stand-down order in the middle of Russia's assault, and McCarthy knows it. But he's trying to pretend it never happened. Cody Fenwick of Alternet brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A new report from the Washington Post last night revealed plans inside the Trump administration to sweep through 10 different cities and arrest as many as 10,000 immigrants in one go. A horrific and authoritarian display of state power, clearly designed to inspire fear and without regard for the inevitable errors and the trauma inflicted. And I smell Stephen Miller. The report explained. According to 7 current and former Department of Homeland Security officials, the administration wanted to target the crush of families that had crossed the U.S.-Mexico border after Trump's failed zero-tolerance prosecution push in early 2018. The ultimate purpose, the officials said, was a show of force to send the message that the United States was going to get tough by swiftly moving to detain and deport recent immigrants, including families with children. The sprawling operation included an effort to fast-track immigration court cases, allowing the government to obtain deportation orders against those who did not show for their hearings. Officials said 90% of those targeted were found deportable in their absence. The subsequent arrests would have required coordinated raids against parents with children in their homes and neighborhoods. An official did reportedly tell the Post that the proposal was nowhere near ready for prime time. They wanted 10 cities and thousands of targets. Nowhere near ready for prime time? I definitely smell Stephen Miller in this. The plan was so haphazard and poorly conceived that even former Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen, Sieg Heil, opposed it. Even Kirstjen Nielsen, Sieg Heil, opposed it because it was too much of a Nazi incursion into really making America great again. And this is after, despite having no problem with other draconian measures against immigrants, because Kirstjen Nielsen, Sieg Heil, loved those other draconian measures, but this one was a draconian measure too far. And it looks like Immigration and Customs enforcement official Rob Vitiello also opposed it. Now, both of them are gone, having been purged by Donald Trump. Conveniently, I might say. And according to the Post, the plan is still under consideration because Stephen Miller's still in the administration, isn't he? It also said that Vitiello and Nielsen's opposition to the plan was part of the reason they were forced out, even though their objections were pragmatic rather than principled. Remember when all those Nazi generals wanted to, blow up Hitler, and this big oak table saved Hitler, and then all those Nazi generals got executed? It wasn't because they wanted to stop Nazism and the rise of it. It's because Hitler was such a terrible leader. He didn't know anything about military strategy, and he was the cause of them losing the war. And if they'd gotten rid of this madman, they would have been able to advance the cause of Nazism as their God intended. Please. Kirstjen Nielsen's Ziegheil was pragmatic. She really wanted to do this draconian measure, but implementing it is, it's hard. We got a plan for this, and these people want to do it right now. The level of depravity in terms of this administration has no bounds. It's just insane. That was Melissa Mark Viverito, president of the Latino Victory Project, told the Post. It's inhumane. There is no sense of the understanding what the implications are for the greater society. There is no consideration that these families are making positive economic contributions to these cities. It is about fear-mongering to the nth degree. And that is exactly what it is, because kick a brown person and to a third of the toxic population that follows this madman, it really does tickle their lizard brain. Barnes of Think Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy. A former Coast Guard lieutenant and white supremacist suspected of plotting attacks on a hit list of prominent politicians and journalists is to remain in custody pending trial, a judge ruled at a court hearing in Maryland yesterday, Monday. The defendant, Chris Hasson, was arrested by federal agents in February on guns and weapons charges. In an earlier motion, prosecutors described those charges as the, quote, proverbial tip of the iceberg, end quote. The defendant is a domestic terrorist, the document read. He is bent on committing acts dangerous to human life that are intended to affect governmental conduct. Authorities, however, have yet to charge Hasson with charges related to domestic terrorism, which has led defense attorneys to argue that Hasson is not nearly as dangerous as the government claims. And why aren't they actually leveling those charges? Well, one William Barr has something to say about that now, doesn't he? Federal Judge Charles Day ruled last week that Hasson could be released provided he was supervised by relatives in Virginia and wore an ankle monitor. Prosecutors appealed the ruling, however, and it was overturned Monday by federal judge George Hazel. I would think that relatives tasked with supervising him and monitoring him don't really want to. I mean, look at the arsenal this guy amassed. Well, I cannot leave it to a handful of civilians to make sure Hasson stands for trial, Hazel said. I'll put that in the hands of the U.S. Marshal Service. Oh, good. Mr. Hasson will get his day in court, the judge continued, but with the evidence, I am not convinced that pretrial release will ensure the safety of the community. Well, geez, just look at the guy's writings, proclamations, and the arsenal. The defense has sought to portray Hasson, represented by a public defender and who remained silent during the hearing, as a family man and veteran with no history of violence, despite being in possession of a sizable arsenal. Judge Hazel circled back, however, to Hasson's documented internet history, including repeated searches for the manifesto of Norwegian domestic terrorist Anders Behring Breivik. Hazel noted that Hasson classified his alleged hit list in a similar way that Breivik did before launching twin attacks in 2011, which killed 77 people, and might I add, it was in 2 cities. A bomb killed a couple of people in that city, and then he went on and killed 70-some-odd kids. When I say kids, between the ages of 14 and 22. Why? Well, because, it was a camp for progressive liberal kids getting together and having fun in the summer. Can't have that. The judge also flagged language used by Hasson, including, "I am dreaming of a way to kill almost every last person on earth." The fact that additional charges have not been filed does not prevent me from considering mitigating factors, Judge Hazel said. Evidence has been provided by the government that the defendant routinely reviewed portions of a manifesto by Anders Breivik, a known domestic terrorist. Hazel noted that not all of the firearms purchased by Hasson had been recovered. It was not immediately known if Hasson would appeal the decision to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Well, let's get on to our break, and when we come back from the break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Bob Hirschon. A 10,000-year-old archaeological site in central Turkey is helping scientists unlock the region's prehistoric past. That's right, the salty residue of ancient urine can reveal how and when humans went from hunter-gatherers to herder-farmers who kept and raised animals in their settlements.
And so we thought, okay, what's a process that, an animal would go through if it was being kept at the site, whether it's corralled between buildings or kept in other specific areas.
Archaeologist Jordan Abel from Columbia's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. He's been studying the settlement of Ashikla-Hoyak, located on a 16-meter-high mound near Turkey's Melendez River.
We thought, okay, these animals would be urinating all the time that they were on the mound.
In the dry climate of central Turkey, the sodium, chloride, and nitrates from all that animal excretion would be trapped in the layers of earth onto which they were originally peed. Excavating those salts layer by layer should provide a timeline of animal populations at the site.
And so we calculated using a simple mass balance approach, an estimate of number of organisms that it would take to produce these large quantities of salt.
Abel and his colleagues found that from 10,000 years ago to about 9,700 years ago, the site jumped from having just a few large organisms worth of whiz to more than 1,800. Of course, people pee too, so the researchers had to figure out which salts were from humans and which were from their animals. Luckily, the location of the salts provided clues. For example, high concentrations in narrow alleyways too small for animals.
The general thought is that they might have been standing on their roofs and just peeing into these alleyways.
Something that goats and sheep do rarely, if ever. By subtracting contributions from humans, the researchers calculated that there had to be between 800 and 1,300 sheep and goats to account for the remaining P. The study appears in the journal Science Advances. If true, it means that animal domestication didn't originate solely in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, as many of us learned in history class.
Our technique has been able to support that idea that somewhere, outside the Fertile Crescent, in this case in central Turkey, was developing this process at near the same time as has been shown elsewhere within the Fertile Crescent.
An important discovery since the advent of herding and farming was a turning point for human civilization, leading to cities and modern society. Abel points out that many archaeological sites have little in the way of physical evidence like bones and artifacts, but presumably all of them have P. So his advice for other archaeologists who want to track animal and human populations? Look out for number 1. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Bob Hirschon.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. One could say that brewing beer is important to the identity of the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Even the city's baseball team goes by the name the Brewers. And so, on this day in labor history, the year was 1953. The beer brewers in Milwaukee walked off the job in what came to be a 10-week strike. Brewers from some of the nation's best-known breweries participated in the strike, including Schlitz, Pabst, Miller, and Blatz. The year before the strike, Schlitz set a world record by producing more than 6.5 million barrels of beer. The strikers were members of the United Brewery Workers Union Local No. 9, part of the CIO. One of the main issues of the strike was that the brewers in the Midwest were typically paid lower wages than those on the West and East Coasts. The Milwaukee brewers wanted their work to be rewarded with similar wages. The workers won the strike when Blatz agreed to their demands. The rest of the Milwaukee brewing companies ousted Blatz from the Brewers Association as a result. The Blatz Brewing Company had been brewing beer in Milwaukee since before the Civil War and had produced the city's first individually bottled beer. But the other brewers were so angry about Blatz giving in to its workers, they cited unethical business models and kicked them out of their association. Due to the work stoppage, Anheuser-Busch out of St. Louis took over the top spot in beer brewing in 1953. The next year, at the company's Christmas party, the president of Schlitz claimed irreparable harm was done to the Milwaukee brewing industry during the 76-day strike of 1953. The next time you have a cold one, take a moment and raise your glass and remember the brewers who made that drink possible. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Donald Trump is playing war games. His trade war with China wiped more than $1 trillion from global markets in just one day. His latest tariff hikes on Chinese goods took effect Friday, and China upped the ante and retaliated on Monday, slapping a 25% tariff on $60 billion worth of American imports. While Trump has repeatedly asserted that China pays the tariffs, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow acknowledged this weekend that U.S. consumers end up paying for the administration's tariffs on Chinese goods. He told Fox News Sunday in an interview that both sides will suffer on this. A new study found that Trump's tariffs are costing Americans $1.4 billion each month. In its biggest one-day loss since January, the Dow Jones Industrial Average on Monday plunged more than 600 points, or 2.8%. The Trump administration is refusing to comply with any and all congressional subpoenas. A federal judge decided to fast-track a decision about whether Trump's accounting firm must turn over years of his financial records.
The White House is building another wall, this one against a siege of subpoenas and legal demands from mostly House Democrats. The Democrats have nothing, the president tweeted this morning, quoting Republican consultant Ed Rollins. They just want to distract from this president. The Washington Post listing at least 20 separate investigations, with the White House blocking nearly 80 demands for documents, testimonies, and other evidence, including the president's tax returns, testimony from his son Donald Jr., and an unredacted version of Robert Mueller's report into Russian election interference. The president's resistance has some Democratic leaders pondering drastic measures.
If the courts take too long, we use our own judicial process within the Congress. And look, I think if you fine someone $25,000 a day to their person, until they comply, it gets their attention.
Some Democrats even calling for arrests.
The president's lapdog, Attorney General, is doing as promised and is opening an investigation into the investigators.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation. The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started, the beginnings of the investigation, how it started.
The Attorney General, Bill Barr, has again raised the stakes. He's tapped a top federal prosecutor to investigate the origins of the Russia investigation. Now, we know that the president has been talking about this. We know that the AG said in congressional testimony that he thinks that there had been spying. But we also know that the IG, the Inspector General, Mr. Horowitz, is looking at this right now. So what will John Durham, he is the top federal prosecutor in Connecticut, nominated by this president to head that position, but he's been in the DOJ since 1982.
The New York Times is reporting that Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan presented an updated plan to Trump's top national security aides that potentially sends as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East if Iran attacks U.S. forces or accelerates its work on nuclear weapons. National Security Advisor John Bolton ordered Shanahan to update the plan, which was presented at a meeting last week and does not call for a land invasion of Iran. Deploying the 120,000 troops was reportedly the, quote, uppermost option of the plan, and it was estimated to take weeks or months to execute. While the plan was presented, it is not clear if Trump was briefed on the plan's details or if he would support it. The Washington Post may have uncovered what led to former Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen's resignation last month. They're reporting that a secret White House plan to arrest thousands of migrant parents and children in 10 U.S. cities was thwarted by resistance from officials who have since been ousted. The plan was reportedly pushed by senior Trump advisor Stephen Miller and was intended to be a show of force against families that had crossed the U.S.-Mexico border after Trump's zero-tolerance prosecution push in 2018. But then Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and former top immigration enforcement official Ronald Vitiello put the brakes on it, expressing concerns that there wasn't time to prepare immigration agents and that the public would have been outraged by the plan. The arrests were reportedly planned for New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and as many as 10,000 migrants were to be targeted. And then there were 23. Montana's Governor Steve Bullock jumps in. Seriously?
I believe in an America where every child has a fair shot to do better than their parents. But we all know that that kind of opportunity no longer exists for most people. For far too many, it never has. That's why we need to defeat Donald Trump in 2020 and defeat the corrupt system that lets campaign money drown out the people's voice, so we can finally make good on the promise of a fair shot for everyone.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, and it even feels like 61 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's important. It is. Winds are being pushed in front of this rain front. That's why it's in front. And though the winds are slated to be out of the due west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, I have experienced some gusts that are considerably more than that. More around the 30 to 35 miles per hour range, by my estimation, which has become rather acute over all this time. We are also, as I alluded to, a rain front, expected to get about 1/10 of an inch, and then about another 20%, or what is that? And then another about 1/4 inch that will fall as light rain tonight, showers today, and then showers tomorrow with over 1/3 of an inch. And we are expected to have rain for days on end. And the low part will be a little bit less than 1/10 of an inch. And we are expected to have 1/2 an inch on a couple of days in the next week. And as I scrolled back and went further back into space, this front is quite large and it's quite wet. And it has a lot of minerals from the sky raining down upon my garden. Or should I say gardens. Hopefully none of that Fukushima stuff. Hopefully that's already been washed out. We hope. You can only hope. Alrighty, it looks like grass pollen is considered as moderate, and maybe that's why I was sneezing a little bit earlier. And during the break, cleared that up just in the nick of time. The air quality index is in the good range at 10 parts per million, and that daytime UV index has come down into the moderate range at 5. Haven't seen that for a while. That must be some sort of cloud cover with a lot of rain. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.75 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 74%. Well, it's going to go to 100% when it starts raining, because the rain is really only about, it looks like, less than 3 miles away, and that could get here quick. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. It is crowdsourced weather reporting, folks. Because the fellow he is just outside of London proper, is registering 66 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. Of course, I think it's in Celsius there, but we put it in Fahrenheit here because that's what makes America great. Paris is 68 and sunny. Rome is 68 and partly cloudy, continuing with a thunderstorm warning that could knock out the electrical grid in Rome. So take care. Kiev is 75 and fair. Kabul is 72 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 78 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 64 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 56 and fair. Of course they are. San Francisco, California is 55 and cloudy with a flood watch and high winds, so do take care there as well. And New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters, and why wouldn't they be anonymous, brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You know, I could have easily said that this was Pompeo's Gulf of Tonkin speech, but I like aluminum tubes and yellow cake from Africa type presentation, because that's essentially what he did to NATO. He delayed his trip to allay any of Vlad's concerns and went to NATO and essentially said, look, this is the evidence we have about Iran, and we are going to give them the kind of punishment that they've long deserved. And what that is whatever Bolton wants it to be. And what does Donnie want? What does he know? He wants to go golfing, and if it hurts people, he'll say yes, and then he can get to golfing.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous worker bees, and why wouldn't they be, from Reuters, brings us the final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I wonder how much saber-rattling against how many countries we can do. Is this the spaghetti, like the spaghetti foreign policy, throw up some sort of fear, war, hoarding, war-mongering BS and see what sticks? What if they all stick? Well, who's saber-rattling in this one? We or they? North Korea said the seizure of one of its cargo ships by the U.S. was an illegal act that violated the spirit of a summit between the two countries' leaders, because they love each other. They love each other so much. They send love letters. And this is sort of like a love letter, because Kim Jong-un is saying, give me back my vessel without delay. The North's foreign ministry said in a statement that it rejected UN Security Council resolutions against it, which the U.S. cited in impounding the vessel as a violation of its sovereignty. The U.S. committed an unlawful and outrageous act of dispossessing our cargo ship. An unnamed ministry spokesman, and why wouldn't they be, said in a statement carried by the North's official KCNA news agency. I want to know about this friendly summit. Where's the transcript for this friendly summit? Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but not Netroots Radio. Netroots Radio is going to be broadcasting on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.